The autumn rain fell softly on the ancient cobblestones of Ravens Hollow Cemetery, creating a gentle symphony that masked the sound of Emma's quiet sobs. At 23, she possessed the kind of ethereal beauty that seemed almost otherworldly: pale skin that glowed like moonlight, long auburn hair that cascaded down her back like liquid fire, and green eyes that held depths of sorrow no one her age should carry. Emma knelt before an ornate mausoleum, her delicate fingers tracing the intricate carvings on its marble facade. The structure was magnificent yet haunting, with Gothic arches and stone roses that seemed to bloom eternally in their cold perfection. Golden letters spelled out a name that had drawn her here: Lady Victoria Ashworth, beloved Queen, 1847 to 1872. She had discovered this place by accident 3 months ago while researching her family genealogy for a college project. The librarian, Mrs. Henderson, had mentioned old records suggesting Emma's great-great-grandmother had once worked as a lady's maid for a wealthy family in this very town. The trail had led her here, to this mysterious tomb that somehow felt familiar, as if she had visited it in dreams. "I don't understand why I feel so connected to you," Emma whispered to the silent stone. "Every night, I see your face in my dreams. You're calling to me, but I can never hear what you're saying." The dreams had started the moment she'd first laid eyes on this mausoleum. In them, a beautiful woman with dark hair and kind eyes would appear, wearing an elegant Victorian gown. She would reach out to Emma, her lips moving urgently as if trying to convey something crucial, but no sound would come. Emma would wake with tears on her cheeks and an overwhelming sense of loss. Thunder rumbled overhead, and Emma pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. She should leave, the cemetery would close soon, and the weather was worsening. But something kept her rooted to this spot. The same invisible force that had drawn her here every evening for the past month. "I brought you flowers again," she said softly, placing a bouquet of white roses at the base of the tomb. "I know it's silly. I never knew you, but, somehow, I feel like I should have." As Emma spoke, she noticed something odd. The temperature around the mausoleum seemed different, warmer, despite the October chill. And, was it her imagination, or did the air shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from summer pavement? She stood slowly, her heart beginning to race. The rational part of her mind insisted she was imagining things, that grief and loneliness were playing tricks on her perception. But Emma had always been sensitive to things others couldn't see or feel. As a child, she'd known when storms were coming hours before the first clouds appeared. She could sense people's emotions like physical presences in the room. "Emma." The voice was so soft she might have imagined it, carried on the wind like a whisper from another world. She spun around, searching the empty cemetery. "Hello? Is someone there?" Only silence answered her, broken by the gentle patter of rain on stone and the distant hoot of an owl. Yet the feeling of being watched intensified. Not in a threatening way, but with a presence that felt ancient and powerful, tinged with both sadness and curiosity. Emma's hand went instinctively to the antique locket she always wore, a family heirloom her grandmother had given her before passing away 5 years ago. The silver felt unusually warm against her skin, almost pulsing with its own rhythm. The locket had been in their family for generations, though no one remembered exactly how long or where it had originated. Her grandmother had insisted Emma wear it always, claiming it would protect her from dark forces. Emma had never believed in such things, but she wore it out of love and remembrance. As she fingered the delicate chain, the locket suddenly sprang open, something it had never done before despite her numerous attempts to pry it apart. Inside was a miniature portrait she had never seen, a woman with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing what appeared to be a Victorian-era dress. Emma's breath caught in her throat. It was the woman from her dreams. The same face that haunted her sleep, the same gentle expression and elegant bearing. But how was that possible? This locket had belonged to her family for generations, and the woman in her dreams was connected to Lady Victoria Ashworth's tomb. "This can't be real," she whispered, staring at the tiny portrait. "This is impossible." But, as she looked from the miniature painting to the name carved on the mausoleum, pieces of a puzzle she didn't understand began to shift in her mind. Her great-great-grandmother had been a lady's maid. Lady Victoria had died young, at only 25. And now Emma, at 23, felt inexplicably drawn to this place, carrying a locket with Victoria's portrait. The wind picked up, howling through the cemetery with an almost mournful sound. Emma's hair whipped around her face as she clutched the open locket, her mind reeling with questions that had no rational answers. That's when she heard footsteps. Not the hurried steps of a groundskeeper rushing to close the cemetery, but slow, deliberate footfalls that seemed to echo with centuries of weight. Emma turned toward the sound, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the swirling mist that had begun to rise from the wet ground, a figure approached. Tall and imposing, moving with fluid grace that seemed almost otherworldly. As he drew nearer, Emma could make out more details, and each one made her breath catch. He was devastatingly handsome in a way that seemed almost dangerous. Dark hair fell in waves to his shoulders, and his skin had the same pale quality as moonlight. But it was his eyes that captured her attention, deep brown, almost black, holding depths of sorrow and knowledge that spoke of centuries rather than years. He wore a long black coat that billowed dramatically in the wind, and, beneath it, clothing that seemed both timeless and expensive. Everything about him suggested wealth and power, but also something indefinably otherworldly. As he approached, Emma noticed other details that made her skin prickle with unease. He moved too silently for his size, his feet making no sound despite the wet ground. The mist seemed to part around him as if recognizing his presence. And, most unnervingly, he cast no reflection in the standing water that had collected on the polished surface of nearby headstones. He stopped about 10 feet away from her, close enough that she could see the sharp planes of his face and the way his dark eyes seemed to pierce straight through her. When he spoke, his voice was rich and cultured, with an accent she couldn't quite place, something European, but ancient. "You have been weeping at this tomb for many nights," he said, "and it wasn't a question. I have watched you come here, drawn by something you cannot name or understand." Emma's mouth went dry. She wanted to run, every instinct screaming that she was in the presence of something far beyond her understanding. But her feet seemed rooted to the ground, and beneath her fear was a strange sense of recognition, as if she had been waiting her entire life for this moment. "Who are you?" she managed to whisper. His lips curved in what might have been a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "I am Adrian Blackthorne," he said, and the name seemed to echo in the air around them with power. "And this tomb you weep over belongs to my queen." Emma's eyes widened as she looked between him and the mausoleum. "Your queen? But that's impossible. Lady Victoria died over 150 years ago. Time," Adrian said softly, "is not the same for all creatures." He took a step closer, and Emma caught a scent like midnight blooming jasmine mixed with something darker, more dangerous. "You carry something that belonged to her." Without conscious thought, Emma's hand moved to her locket. Adrian's eyes followed the gesture, and, for a moment, his controlled expression cracked, revealing an ocean of grief and longing that made Emma's heart ache. "May I see it?" His voice was gentler now, almost pleading. Emma hesitated, but something about his expression, the raw pain in those ancient eyes, moved her to comply. With trembling fingers, she lifted the locket, holding it where he could see the miniature portrait inside. Adrian's face went completely still, as if he had stopped breathing entirely. For a long moment, he simply stared at the tiny painting, and Emma could see his hands trembling slightly at his sides. "Victoria," he breathed, and the name fell from his lips like a prayer. "My beloved Victoria." "I don't understand," Emma said, her voice barely audible. "This locket has been in my family for generations. How can it have her portrait inside?" Adrian's eyes met hers, and she saw in them a complexity of emotion that spoke of love, loss, and secrets that had been kept for far too long. "Because," he said slowly, each word weighted with significance, "you are not here by accident. Nothing about this, your presence, your dreams, the locket, is coincidence." He paused, studying her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed, as if he could see into her very soul. "Tell me, child, what do you know of your ancestry? Of your great-great-grandmother?" Emma's mind raced, trying to connect dots that seemed to exist in different dimensions. "Only that she worked as a lady's maid for a wealthy family. That's what brought me here, researching the connection. Her name," Adrian said quietly, "was Sarah Chan. And she was not merely a lady's maid. She was Victoria's dearest friend, her confidant, and the keeper of her most precious secrets." The world seemed to tilt around Emma as pieces of impossible truth began to form a picture her rational mind refused to accept. "That's impossible. You can't know that. You can't have known my great-great-grandmother. But, even as she said the words, she was remembering things, fragments of family stories that had never made sense before. Her grandmother speaking of Sarah in hushed, reverent tones, as if she had been more than just a servant. Old family letters written in what appeared to be different hands, some formal and elegant, others more personal and intimate. I knew Sarah well, Adrian continued, his voice heavy with memory. She was the only human Victoria trusted with the truth of what I was, what we were. When Victoria died. He paused, grief flickering across his features like shadow. Sarah made a promise. A sacred vow to protect something precious, to keep it safe until the time was right. Emma's hand went again to the locket, understanding beginning to dawn like a terrible sunrise. The locket, she whispered, is more than a simple piece of jewelry, Adrian confirmed. It is a key, a beacon, and a protection all woven into one. Victoria wore it always. It was created by ancient magic to serve a specific purpose. The rain had stopped, Emma realized dimly, though she couldn't remember when. The cemetery around them seemed to exist in a bubble of stillness, as if the world held its breath for this moment of revelation. What purpose, she asked, though part of her already knew the answer would change everything. Adrian stepped closer, close enough now that she could see the subtle and human perfection of his features, the way his canine teeth were just slightly too sharp, the complete absence of rise and fall in his chest that should indicate breathing. To find you, he said simply. To call you home when the time was right. You see, Emma, you are not merely Sarah's descendant. You carry within you something far more precious, something that died with Victoria and has been waiting, dormant in your bloodline, for the right moment to awaken. Emma's world tilted again, reality shifting like sand beneath her feet. I don't understand what you're saying. Victoria was not human when she died, Adrian said gently, his voice carrying the weight of absolute truth. She had begun the transformation to become like me, to become my eternal queen and companion. But the change was interrupted by tragedy, by those who feared what she was becoming. The implications hit Emma like physical blows. You're saying she was, that you're vampire, Adrian said without flinching. Ancient, powerful, and cursed to walk this earth for eternity. Victoria chose to join me in that existence, to rule beside me as my queen and equal. But mortals discovered our secret before the transformation could be completed. Emma's legs suddenly felt weak, and she stumbled backward until she hit the cold marble of Victoria's tomb. The solid stone at her back was the only thing that felt real in a world that had suddenly become a fairy tale. They killed her, she whispered, the truth hitting her with stunning clarity. They tried, Adrian's voice hardened, old anger surfacing like lava. But Victoria was stronger than they anticipated, the change already begun. As she lay dying, she made Sarah promise to protect the essence of what she was becoming, to carry it forward until one of her bloodline could complete what had been started. Emma's hand moved to her throat, feeling her pulse racing against her fingertips. You're saying that I have. The potential that lay dormant in Victoria runs in your veins, Adrian confirmed. Enhanced by generations of delusion and protection, waiting for the right circumstances to emerge. Sarah's family carried this secret, this sleeping power, passing it down without even understanding what they protected. The locket felt warm against Emma's skin, almost burning now. As she looked down at it, she could swear the tiny portrait of Victoria was looking back at her with eyes that held knowledge and compassion. The dreams, Emma breathed. She's been trying to tell me something. She has been calling you home, Adrian said softly. Drawing you to this place where her mortal life ended and her true existence was meant to begin. The locket has been amplifying that call, growing stronger as you approach the age Victoria was when she began her transformation. Emma felt overwhelmed, drowning in revelations that defied everything she had believed about reality. This is insane. This can't be real. But, even as she protested, she was remembering other things, her unusual sensitivity to emotions, her ability to sense storms and changes in the atmosphere, the way she had always felt different from other people, as if she existed slightly apart from the world around her. You have felt it your entire life, Adrian said, reading her thoughts with uncanny accuracy. The sense that you belonged somewhere else, that something was missing. The unusual abilities that you dismissed as intuition or imagination. It was true. Emma had always known she was different, had always felt like she was waiting for something without knowing what. The loneliness that had plagued her despite being surrounded by people who cared about her, the restlessness that no amount of travel or new experiences could cure. But, why now, she asked. Why is this happening now? Because you have reached the age of choosing, Adrian replied. The same age Victoria was when she made her decision. The power that has lain dormant in your bloodline is awakening, whether you understand it or not. You can feel it, can't you? The changes beginning in your body, the heightening of your senses? Emma's breath caught as she realized he was right. Over the past few months, she had noticed subtle differences, colors seemed more vivid, sounds carried farther, and she could smell things that others couldn't detect. She had attributed it to stress or perhaps the onset of allergies, but now. What happens if I don't, if I refuse? She asked. Adrian's expression grew somber. The power will fade, returning to dormancy for another generation. You will live a normal human life, but you will always feel incomplete, always searching for something you cannot name. And, if I accept? Then, you complete the transformation that was begun over a century ago. You become what Victoria was meant to be, my queen, my equal, my eternal companion. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You become immortal. The weight of the choice settled on Emma's shoulders like a physical burden. Immortality. Eternal life. The chance to unlock abilities and experiences beyond human imagination. But also the end of everything she had known, everything she had planned for her future. I need time to think, she said, her voice shaking. Adrian nodded, understanding in his ancient eyes. Of course. This is not a decision to be made lightly. But, know this, Emma, the choice cannot be delayed indefinitely. The awakening power will not wait forever. He stepped back, becoming more shadow than substance in the gathering darkness. I will return tomorrow night. If you choose to embrace your destiny, be here at midnight. If not. He paused, grief flickering across his features. Then, I will honor your decision and trouble you no more. Wait, Emma called as he began to fade into the mist. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know this isn't some elaborate deception? Adrian's form solidified again, and he moved with inhuman speed to stand directly in front of her. Before she could react, he had taken her hand in his, and the contact sent electricity racing through her entire body. Look, he said simply. Emma gasped as visions flooded her mind, scenes from over a century ago, as clear and detailed as if she were watching a movie. She saw Victoria, alive and radiant, dancing in a grand ballroom wearing the same dress from the Lockett portrait. She saw Sarah, her great-great-grandmother, young and devoted, helping Victoria prepare for secret midnight meetings. She saw Adrian as he had been then, less haunted, filled with joy as he courted the woman who would become his queen. She witnessed their private moments together, tender conversations about eternity, passionate declarations of love that transcended mortal understanding, careful planning for Victoria's transformation. And then, she saw the attack, frightened villagers bursting into the castle, stakes and torches in hand, driven by fear and superstition. She felt Victoria's terror, not for herself but for Adrian's safety. She experienced the moment when Victoria chose to protect the man she loved by allowing herself to be captured. The vision showed Sarah's frantic rush to Victoria's side as she lay dying, the mystical ritual that preserved the essence of her transforming soul in the locket, and the solemn promise made between the dying woman and her faithful friend. When the visions ended, Emma found herself on her knees, tears streaming down her face. The emotions from those long-ago events still echoed in her chest, love so powerful it defied death, loyalty that transcended mortality, and hope that could survive centuries of waiting. Now you understand, Adrian said gently, helping her to her feet. Now you know the truth of what you carry. Emma looked up at him, seeing past the dangerous beauty to the profound loneliness that had shaped him for over a century. You've been alone all this time. Waiting, he corrected. Hoping. Protecting Victoria's resting place and watching for the signs that would herald the awakening of her essence in one of Sarah's descendants. The full magnitude of his vigil struck her. Over 150 years of solitude, sustained only by love and the possibility that someday his queen might return to him in a new form. The choice is yours, Emma, Adrian said softly. But know that whatever you decide, You have already given me something precious, the chance to speak Victoria's name aloud again, to remember what love felt like before loss consumed it. As he spoke these words, the mist swirled around him once more, and this time Emma didn't try to stop him as he faded into the shadows between the tombstones. She stood alone in the cemetery, clutching the locket that no longer felt like simple jewelry but like a bridge between worlds, between past and future, between the mortal life she had always known and the immortal existence that beckoned from the darkness. The weight of destiny pressed down on her as she finally turned to leave the cemetery, knowing that tomorrow night she would have to make the most important decision of her life or perhaps of her many lives to come. Emma spent the entire day in a haze of conflicted emotions, barely able to concentrate on anything beyond the impossible revelation from the night before. She had called in sick to her part-time job at the bookstore, claiming a migraine, which wasn't entirely untrue. Her head pounded with the weight of everything Adrian had told her. She sat in her small apartment, surrounded by stacks of genealogy research that now took on an entirely different meaning. Every document, every family photo, every piece of inherited jewelry suddenly seemed like potential evidence of the supernatural legacy running through her bloodline. Her roommate, Jessica Martinez, had tried to engage her in conversation over breakfast, but Emma could barely form coherent responses. How could she explain that she had discovered she was descended from a woman who had been best friends with a vampire's intended queen? That she might carry within her the dormant essence of that long-dead woman? "You look like you've seen a ghost," Jessica had said with concern, not knowing how close to the truth she was. Emma had forced a smile and blamed her distraction on research stress, but Jessica's knowing eyes suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. They had been friends since college, and Jessica possessed an uncanny ability to read Emma's moods. Now, as evening approached, Emma found herself pacing her bedroom, the locket heavy against her chest. She had tried to remove it several times throughout the day, but each attempt had filled her with such overwhelming anxiety that she had immediately put it back on. The miniature portrait of Victoria seemed to watch her from within the silver confines, and, more than once, Emma could have sworn she saw the tiny painted lips move, forming words she couldn't hear. At 8 o'clock, her phone rang. The caller ID showed her mother's number, and Emma briefly considered not answering. How could she have a normal conversation with her mother when her entire understanding of reality had been turned upside down? "Hi, Mom," she said, trying to inject normalcy into her voice. "Emma, sweetheart, you sound strange. Are you feeling all right?" Linda Chen, she had kept her maiden name even after marriage, had inherited the same intuitive abilities that seemed to run in their family, though she had always dismissed them as woman's intuition or mother's instinct. "I'm fine," Emma lied. "Just tired from all the research I've been doing." "About our family history?" Her mother's voice carried a note of something that might have been concern. "Emma, I need to tell you something. I've been thinking about that project of yours, and I'm not sure it's such a good idea to dig too deeply into the past." Emma's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" There was a long pause before her mother spoke again. "There are some family stories that were meant to stay buried. Some secrets that were kept for good reason." "Mom, what are you talking about?" "Your great-great-grandmother Sarah, the official family records say she was a lady's maid, but there were always whispers about something more. Stories that my grandmother would start to tell and then stop, as if she had almost revealed something forbidden." Emma's grip tightened on the phone. "What kind of stories?" "About the family she worked for. About strange happenings in that old mansion. About why Sarah left so suddenly, and moved across the country, and why she never spoke of her time there except to warn her children to stay away from certain places and certain people." The implications sent chills down Emma's spine. Did she ever mention a locket? An antique silver locket? Another long pause. "Emma, where did you hear about that?" "I'm wearing it," Emma said softly. "Grandma gave it to me before she died. She said it had been in our family for generations." Her mother's intake of breath was audible. "Oh, Emma. Oh no. I told her to have it melted down, to destroy it completely. I begged her not to pass it on." "Why? What's wrong with it?" "Because every woman in our family who has worn that locket has experienced things. Strange dreams, visions, an obsession with death and darkness. Your grandmother's sister wore it for a month when she was young and nearly died from refusing to eat. She claimed she was waiting for someone who would never age, never die. Emma felt the room spinning around her. What happened to her? She finally took it off and gave it to my grandmother, swearing never to touch it again. She lived a normal life after that, but she never forgot whatever she had experienced while wearing it. She used to say that some family legacies were curses disguised as gifts. The weight of the locket seemed to increase with every word her mother spoke. Emma fingered the chain, feeling the warm metal pulse against her skin like a heartbeat. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Do you believe in supernatural things? In creatures that exist outside normal reality? Emma, why are you asking me this? Please, just answer me. Her mother was quiet for so long that Emma thought the call had been dropped. Finally, she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. When I was your age, I wore that locket for one night. Just one night, because I was curious about the family stories. I had dreams that were so vivid, so real, that when I woke up I could still smell the candles from a ballroom that existed over a century ago. I could still feel the touch of hands that belonged to someone who should have been dead for decades. Emma's breath caught. Did you see Victoria? The silence that followed was deafening. When her mother spoke again, her voice was tight with old fear. How do you know that name? I never told anyone that name. I've been having the same dreams, Emma admitted. But, Mom, it's more than dreams now. I met someone last night. Someone who claims to have known Victoria, known Sarah. Emma, listen to me very carefully. Take off that locket right now and destroy it. Tonight. Don't wait, don't think about it, just get rid of it. I can't, Emma said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. I've tried, but I can't remove it. It won't come off. Then, you're already too deep, her mother said, and Emma could hear tears in her voice. The same thing happened to Sarah, according to the old family letters I found after your grandmother died. She wrote about being chosen, about carrying a burden that wasn't hers to bear but that she couldn't escape. Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn weather. What letters? You never mentioned any letters. Because I burned them, her mother said firmly. I burned everything I could find that connected our family to that place, to those people, to whatever dark magic has been following us for generations. But I kept one thing, Sarah's final letter, written just before she died. What did it say? That the choice would come again. That one of her descendants would face the same decision she had witnessed Victoria make. And that when that time came, the family could only hope that love would be stronger than the darkness. Emma's heart was racing now, pieces of a puzzle falling into place with terrifying clarity. Mom, I think the time is now. I think I'm the one Sarah was talking about. Then, may God help you, her mother whispered. Because if the family stories are true, no one else can. After ending the call, Emma sat in stunned silence. Everything Adrian had told her was being confirmed by her own family's carefully hidden history. The locket, the dreams, the sense of being chosen for something beyond her understanding, it was all real. But, knowing the truth didn't make the choice any easier. She spent the next few hours researching everything she could find about vampire mythology, about the nature of immortality, about what it truly meant to leave humanity behind. The logical part of her mind insisted that she was suffering from some kind of elaborate delusion, that the stress of her research had triggered a psychological break from reality. But, the locket around her neck pulsed with warmth that couldn't be explained by body heat, and the dreams that had been haunting her sleep for months felt more real than her waking life. At 11 o'clock, Emma found herself standing in front of her bedroom mirror, studying her reflection. She looked the same as always, auburn hair falling in waves around her shoulders, green eyes that had always seemed too knowing for her age, pale skin that rarely tanned despite hours in the sun. But, now she could see things she had never noticed before. The way her canine teeth were slightly sharper than normal. The way her pulse showed at her throat in a manner that seemed almost hypnotic. The way her eyes reflected light differently than they should. Were these signs that the transformation Adrian spoke of was already beginning? Or was she simply seeing what she expected to see, reading supernatural significance into perfectly normal human traits? At 1:45 she made her decision. Emma grabbed her jacket and headed for the door, leaving behind a note for Jessica in case she didn't return. She didn't know what she was going to tell Adrian when she saw him, but she knew she couldn't live with the uncertainty. She needed answers, even if those answers changed everything about her existence. The cemetery was shrouded in mist when she arrived, as if the very air acknowledged the supernatural nature of what was about to occur. Emma made her way through the familiar paths, her feet carrying her automatically to Victoria's mausoleum. Adrian was already there, standing beside the tomb with his hands clasped behind his back. He wore the same long black coat, but tonight Emma could see more details in his appearance that confirmed his inhuman nature. His skin had a luminous quality that had nothing to do with moonlight, and, when he turned to face her, his eyes glowed with an inner fire that was both beautiful and terrifying. "You came," he said, and there was surprise in his voice. "I was not certain you would." "I spoke to my mother today," Emma said without preamble. "She confirmed everything you told me. The family history, the locket, the connection to Victoria and Sarah." Adrian nodded slowly. "Your bloodline has carried this secret well, protecting it even from themselves when necessary. She begged me to destroy the locket and forget everything I've learned. And yet you are here." Emma moved closer to the mausoleum, her fingers trailing over the carved roses in the marble. "Because I realized something today. I've never felt like I belonged anywhere, with anyone. I've always been searching for something I couldn't name. What if this is what I've been looking for my entire life?" "Immortality is not simply an extended human existence," Adrian said carefully. "It changes everything about how you experience reality. You will watch everyone you have ever cared about age and die. You will need blood to sustain yourself. You will be forever apart from the mortal world you have always known." "But I'll have you," Emma said, the words surprising her with their certainty. "And, through me, you'll have Victoria back in some form." Adrian's expression grew complex, emotions warring across his features. "You are not Victoria, Emma. Even if you carry some essence of her soul, you are your own person with your own thoughts and feelings. I do not want you to make this choice thinking you must become someone else." Emma felt a warmth in her chest at his words, respect for her individual identity, even in the midst of his own desperate longing for his lost love. "But, you said the locket carries Victoria's essence. What happens to that if I choose transformation?" "It becomes part of you, but not in the way you might think. Her memories, her experiences, her love, they would be accessible to you, but filtered through your own consciousness. You would gain her knowledge and her connection to me, but you would remain fundamentally yourself." The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. To carry within herself the memories of a great love affair, to understand the depth of connection that could exist between immortal beings, but to experience it all through her own unique perspective. "Show me," Emma said suddenly. "Show me what the transformation would be like." Adrian hesitated. "Once begun, it cannot be easily stopped. The process creates a bond between maker and progeny that is deeper than any human relationship." "I understand. But I need to know what I'm choosing before I can truly choose it." After a long moment, Adrian stepped closer. "Give me your hand." Emma extended her right hand, and Adrian took it gently in both of his. His skin was cool but not unpleasantly so, and she could feel power radiating from him like heat from a banked fire. "Close your eyes," he said softly. "Open your mind to mine." Emma let her eyes drift shut, and immediately felt a presence touch the edges of her consciousness. It was vast and ancient, carrying the weight of centuries but also a tenderness that made her breath catch. Through Adrian's memories, she experienced what it was like to see the world through vampire senses. Colors became more vivid, sounds carried emotional resonances that human ears couldn't detect, and scents told stories of everyone who had passed through an area for hours or even days. She felt the enhanced physical capabilities, strength that could crush stone, speed that made her feel like she was flying, reflexes that could track the path of falling raindrops. But she also experienced the hunger, the constant awareness of the blood flowing through nearby veins, the way human heartbeats called to something predatory in her nature. More than the physical changes, she sensed the emotional transformation. The way immortality changed perspective, making some things seem trivial while highlighting others with profound importance. The way love became deeper and more complex when you knew it could last forever. And, through it all, she felt Adrian's loneliness, a hollow ache that had defined his existence for over a century, the way he had learned to find meaning in small things while waiting for the return of the one person who could make eternity feel like a gift rather than a curse. When he broke the connection, Emma swayed on her feet, overwhelmed by the intensity of what she had experienced. "That is what you would become," Adrian said quietly. "Beautiful and terrible, powerful and dependent, immortal but forever changed." Emma opened her eyes, studying his face in the pale moonlight. "And you've lived with this alone for so long." "Not entirely alone. I have had companions over the years. Other vampires who offered friendship and alliance. But never again have I found someone I wished to share eternity with. Until now." "Until now," he agreed. "But, Emma, you must be certain. Once you begin this path, there is no return to humanity." Emma thought of her mother's fear, of the normal life she would be leaving behind, of all the human experiences she would never have, growing old with someone, having children, experiencing the natural cycle of mortal existence. But she also thought of the loneliness that had always haunted her, the sense that she was meant for something more than the ordinary life that stretched before her. The way she had felt drawn to this place, to Victoria's tomb, to the mystery that had shaped her family's history for generations. "I've made my decision," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. Adrian searched her face, looking for any sign of uncertainty. "Tell me." Emma reached up and unclasped the locket from around her neck. For the first time since putting it on, it came away easily, as if it had been waiting for this moment. She opened it and looked one last time at Victoria's portrait. "I choose you," she said simply. "I choose this life, this transformation, this chance to be part of something greater than anything I could achieve as a mortal." Adrian's face went through a series of expressions: hope, fear, joy, and something that might have been relief. "Are you certain?" "Once I begin the process, I'm certain," Emma interrupted. "I've been waiting my entire life for this choice, even though I didn't understand what I was waiting for." Adrian nodded slowly, then moved to take the locket from her hands. As soon as his fingers touched the silver, it began to glow with a soft, warm light that seemed to emanate from Victoria's portrait. "Then, we begin," he said solemnly. "But first, you must understand what will happen. The transformation takes 3 nights. Tonight, I will share my blood with you, beginning the change. Tomorrow night, the process will deepen, and you may experience visions, memories that are not your own. On the 3rd night, if you still choose to continue, the change will be completed. And Victoria's essence will merge with yours during the final transformation, guided by the locket's magic. You will become yourself, enhanced by her memories and strengthened by her love." Emma felt a mixture of excitement and terror, but beneath both was a deep sense of rightness, as if she was finally stepping onto a path she had always been meant to walk. "I'm ready," she said. Adrian cupped her face in his hands, studying her features with an intensity that made her feel as if he was memorizing every detail. "You are extraordinary, Emma Chen. Whether this transformation succeeds or fails, you have already given me something I had lost hope of ever finding again." "What's that?" "A reason to believe in the future." And, with those words, he leaned down and kissed her, and Emma felt the world dissolve around them as the first stage of her transformation began. The first night of transformation was unlike anything Emma could have imagined. After Adrian's kiss, which had tasted of midnight and starlight, she had felt a strange warmth spreading through her veins. He had bitten his own wrist and offered her his blood, and, though every rational part of her mind had recoiled, she had drunk deeply, sealing their supernatural bond. The walk back to her apartment had been surreal. Her senses were already beginning to heighten, and she could hear conversations from blocks away, smell individual scents carried on the wind, see details in the darkness that should have been invisible. When she looked in the mirror before going to bed, her reflection was still there, but it seemed somehow more vivid, as if she was becoming more real rather than less. She had called in sick to work again, knowing instinctively that she would need the next few days to adjust to the changes happening in her body. Jessica had left early for a weekend trip to visit her parents, leaving Emma alone to experience the transformation in private. The second day brought the visions. Emma woke at sunset, her internal clock already shifting to match her new nature. As consciousness returned, she found herself flooded with memories that weren't her own as scenes from Victoria's life playing out behind her closed eyelids with startling clarity. She saw Victoria as a young woman, beautiful and spirited, chafing against the restrictions placed on women of her era. She witnessed the moment Victoria first met Adrian at a grand ball, the instant recognition that passed between them as if their souls had been searching for each other across centuries. Emma experienced Victoria's courtship through her own eyes, clandestine meetings in moonlit gardens, passionate letters exchanged in secret, the gradual revelation of Adrian's true nature and the choice Victoria had made to join him in immortal existence. But, perhaps most powerfully, Emma felt Victoria's emotions as if they were her own. The depth of love she had felt for Adrian, a connection that transcended physical attraction or romantic infatuation to become something that touched the very core of her being. The excitement and anticipation she had felt as her transformation began, the sense of stepping into a larger, more meaningful existence. And then came the darker memories, the betrayal by someone Victoria had trusted, the midnight attack by fearful villagers who had discovered their secret, the desperate battle as Adrian tried to protect her while she was still vulnerable in her half-transformed state. Emma wept as she experienced Victoria's final moments, the woman's determination to save the man she loved even at the cost of her own existence. She felt the moment when Victoria's essence was captured in the locket, preserved by ancient magic, and Sarah's desperate love for her mistress and friend. But, woven through all of Victoria's memories was something else, a presence that Emma gradually recognized as her own. She saw moments from her own life reflected in Victoria's experiences, heard echoes of her own thoughts and feelings in the other woman's consciousness. The realization struck her like lightning: this wasn't simply Victoria's essence being transplanted into her body. Rather, she and Victoria were two parts of the same soul, separated by time and circumstance but, finally, being reunited. Victoria hadn't just been Adrian's intended queen, she had been Emma's past incarnation, and Emma was her return to the world. By the evening of the second day, Emma felt as if she was living two lives simultaneously. She retained all her own memories and personality, but now she also carried Victoria's knowledge and experiences. She could remember both her childhood in modern America and also a youth spent in Victorian England. She knew both the challenges of contemporary life and the intricate social codes of a bygone era. When Adrian appeared at her apartment that evening, she was waiting for him. "You understand now," he said as soon as he saw her face. "I understand everything," Emma replied, her voice carrying new depths. Victoria didn't die. She was simply paused, waiting for the right time and circumstances to return. Adrian's face showed relief and joy in equal measure. "I had hoped, but I could not be certain until the memories surfaced. You are her, but you are also yourself. The soul that loved me so deeply that it chose to return after more than a century of waiting." Emma moved to him, feeling both familiar and new in her own skin. "I remember loving you. But I also love you now, as Emma, discovering you for what feels like the first time." "And tomorrow night?" "Tomorrow night, we complete what was started so long ago." The third evening, Emma made her way to the cemetery one final time as a partially mortal being. The transformation had been progressing steadily, her reflection had grown fainter in mirrors, her need for food had disappeared entirely, and her strength had increased to levels that would have been impossible for a human. But, more than the physical changes, she felt the emotional and spiritual transformation. The restless longing that had plagued her entire life was finally finding resolution. The sense of incompleteness that had driven her to search for something she couldn't name was being filled by the reunion of her separated soul. Adrian was waiting by Victoria's mausoleum, but tonight he wasn't alone. 3 other figures stood with him, 2 men and a woman, all carrying the same inhuman beauty and ancient presence that marked them as vampires. "My inner circle," Adrian explained as Emma approached. "They have come to witness your completion and to welcome you into our family." The woman stepped forward first. She was tall and elegant, with silver hair that caught moonlight like spun metal and eyes the color of deep amber. "I am Celeste Dubois," she said in an accent that spoke of centuries spent in France. "I was Adrian's first progeny, created nearly 600 years ago." One of the men, dark-haired with the bearing of nobility, inclined his head formally. "Marcus Aurelius, and, yes, that is my real name. I joined Adrian's family during the height of the Roman Empire." The third vampire was younger looking, with warm brown skin and eyes that sparkled with humor despite their supernatural glow. "And I'm James Washington, the baby of the family at a mere 200 years old. I was turned during the American Civil War." Emma felt no fear in their presence, only a sense of homecoming. These were her new family, beings who would understand the unique challenges and gifts of immortal existence. "Are you ready for the final transformation?" Adrian asked, taking her hand. Emma looked around at the assembled vampires, at the mausoleum that had housed Victoria's mortal remains for over a century, at the man who had waited so long for her return. "I've been ready my entire life." Adrian led her to the mausoleum, and, as they approached, the heavy stone door swung open with a grinding sound that echoed through the cemetery. Inside, Emma could see that it wasn't simply a tomb but a beautifully appointed chamber with walls covered in intricate carvings and a ceiling painted with constellations. At the center of the room was an ornate stone sarcophagus, but it wasn't sealed. The lid had been moved aside to reveal not a body, but a bed of white roses that looked as fresh as if they had been placed there moments ago, despite being over a century old. "Victoria's final resting place," Adrian said softly. "Where her mortal life ended and where her immortal existence will begin again." Emma understood. This wasn't just about completing her transformation, it was about symbolically laying Victoria's interrupted life to rest and allowing Emma to fully claim her place as Adrian's queen. She climbed into the sarcophagus, lying among the eternal roses, and held up the locket that had started everything. Adrian took it from her, opening it to reveal Victoria's portrait one last time. "Victoria Ashworth," he said formally, "your vigil is ended. Rest now in the knowledge that love has triumphed over death." He placed the locket on her chest, and immediately Emma felt it grow warm against her skin. Then, Adrian bent over her, his fangs extending as he prepared to complete the transformation. "Emma Chen," he said, his voice carrying the weight of ceremony, "do you choose immortality? Do you choose to become my queen and equal, to rule beside me for all eternity?" "I do," Emma said, her voice steady and sure. Adrian bit into his own wrist, allowing several drops of his blood to fall onto the locket. The ancient silver began to glow with brilliant light, and Emma felt power rushing through her in waves that seemed to originate from the jewelry and spread throughout her entire being. "Then, drink," Adrian said, offering her his wrist, "and be reborn." Emma drank deeply, feeling the last vestiges of her mortality dissolving away. The transformation that had been interrupted over a century ago finally completed itself, and she felt her consciousness expand to encompass not just her own lifetime but the memories and experiences that spanned far longer. But, unlike the overwhelming rush of the previous days, this final merging felt peaceful, natural. Victoria's memories integrated seamlessly with her own, becoming part of her without overwhelming her individual identity. She was still Emma Chen, but she was also Emma who remembered being Victoria, Emma who carried within her the depth of love and experience that came from multiple lifetimes. The locket against her chest grew brighter and brighter until the entire mausoleum was filled with silver radiance. Emma felt her body changing, becoming stronger, more perfect, more attuned to the supernatural forces that governed immortal existence. When the light finally faded, Emma opened her eyes to find herself looking up at Adrian with vision that could see clearly in the complete darkness of the tomb. Every detail of his face was visible to her, every emotion that played across his features. "My queen," he said softly, and Emma heard layers of meaning in those two words: greeting, recognition, joy, and welcome. Emma sat up among the roses, feeling her transformed body move with inhuman grace and strength. "My king," she replied, and knew that the words came from both Emma and Victoria, past and present unified at last. Adrian helped her from the sarcophagus, and Emma noticed that the white roses had changed. Where her body had lain among them, they had transformed to deep red, as if infused with the blood magic that had completed her transformation. "A sign," Celeste said from the entrance to the mausoleum, "that the ritual has been successful." Emma walked outside to find the other vampires waiting for her, their expressions showing welcome and acceptance. But, more than that, she sensed their relief. Adrian's long loneliness had been a weight on all of them, and her transformation meant the return of balance to their family. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked with genuine curiosity. Emma considered the question, taking inventory of her new existence. She felt powerful in ways she couldn't have imagined as a mortal. Her senses were so enhanced that she could hear conversations in the town beyond the cemetery, smell individual scents from miles away, see the auras of life energy surrounding every living thing. But, more than the physical changes, she felt complete. The restless searching that had defined her human life was gone, replaced by a sense of purpose and belonging that filled all the empty spaces in her soul. "I feel like I'm finally home," she said honestly. James grinned, his fangs glinting in the moonlight. "Welcome to immortality, Your Majesty. Fair warning, the first few decades are the hardest while you adjust to the timeline of forever. We have eternity to learn together," Adrian said, taking Emma's hand. "All the things we never had time for in our previous existence." Emma looked around at her new family, at the mausoleum that had housed the mystery of her origins, at the cemetery that had called to her for months without her understanding why. Everything had led to this moment, this choice, this transformation. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Adrian said, "we go home. I have a castle to show you, one that has been waiting for its queen to return. Celeste has been managing the practical aspects of our existence, but there are decisions that require both king and queen to make." Emma thought briefly of her human life, her job, her apartment, her friends and family who would wonder what had happened to her. But already those concerns felt distant, like worries from another lifetime. "My family," she said. "They should know I'm safe, even if they can never understand what I've become. We can arrange for them to believe you've moved away, started a new life somewhere distant," Celeste offered. "It's kinder than letting them search for someone they can never find." Emma nodded, understanding the necessity even as it saddened her. This was one of the costs of immortality, the severing of mortal ties to prevent endless grief for those left behind. But, as Adrian squeezed her hand, she felt the rightness of her choice reinforced. She had gained something immeasurably precious, a love that could last forever, a family bound by supernatural ties, a purpose that transcended the brief concerns of mortal existence. "There's something else," Marcus said, his expression growing serious. "Word has already begun to spread through the supernatural community about your transformation. There will be those who wish to test your strength, to challenge Adrian's rule now that his queen has returned." "Let them come," Emma said, and was surprised by the steel in her own voice. "I may be newly transformed, but I carry the memories of one life and the determination of another. Anyone who threatens our family will discover that love protected by immortal power is not easily conquered." Adrian's smile was fierce with pride and approval. Spoken like a true queen. As they left the cemetery together, Emma looked back once at Victoria's mausoleum. The stone structure looked different now, less like a tomb and more like a temple, a monument to love's triumph over death and time. "Thank you," she whispered, not sure if she was speaking to Victoria, to Sarah, to the forces of destiny that had brought her to this moment, or to all of them. The wind carried her words away into the night, and Emma thought she heard an answering whisper on the breeze, a voice that might have been Victoria's, filled with joy and gratitude and the deep satisfaction of a purpose finally fulfilled. Then, Adrian's arm was around her waist, and they were moving with supernatural speed through the sleeping town, toward whatever challenges and adventures awaited them in their shared eternity. Emma had found her destiny, her love, and her true self all in one transformative moment. The young woman who had once sobbed alone at a mysterious tomb was gone forever, replaced by a queen who would never again face the darkness alone. Love had indeed proven stronger than death, and two souls separated by over a century had finally found their way back to each other. In the distance, church bells chimed midnight, marking not just the end of one day and the beginning of another, but the start of forever for two hearts that had learned that some loves are truly eternal. The vampire king had found his queen, and the queen had found her home at last.